studied.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Now you're being recorded.
Anyway, yeah, he's good. You know, he's still in training always, but he's injured. I didn't make the class yesterday. I had to take him to the vet. He's got a soft, he's probably got a tendon like I do, several, that's strained. So he's limping. So this little puppy, yeah.
I never heard that about training techniques before. That's
Oh,
horrible.
Well, actually, you know,
yeah.
we got our dog. We trained him as well, and through PetSmart, and they use the aggressive approach.
Oh, wow.
You know, with the pulling and you know, to keep them in line and stuff like that, and use forceful words.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I've read numerous, and I've really studied this, and they say that it can damage because all of their chi energy is right through here, through there, you know. So if you're pulling on a prong or a choker, like I see, you know, walking every day, that's not good. So it's just teaching them the command and positive. I mean, that's how I've done it with this puppy, and he's great.
I thought more people had changed to that harness type of leash.
That's what I
and
have.
we're getting away from the neck.
Yeah, that's what we use, a harness.
I use a harness, but you'd be surprised in Sun City. Yes, a lot of people use that prong.
Oh, really?
I get so upset because all you can imagine is if the dog pulls,
Oh, wow.
it's going into their neck like that.
Yeah.
So,
And they
but some
can't-
dogs, huh?
Oh, I saw a woman
to
walking.
breathe as well. So-
I saw a woman walking her dog once, and she pulled that dog up that way.
Oh,
She wanted him to stop sniffing the ground, and she just yanked him. So, but on and off, we keep talking about it. So you got your dog from a breeder? Did you go to a breeder or a shelter?
No, you can't get, this is a Moyen Poodle. I adopted him 4 months before I even saw him.
oh, wow.
Yeah, this type of breed, especially a Moyen. Not that many people do it. He's between his mother's standard. The father is a miniature, so they're in between. Because I've had the standards, but I don't have any shoulders anymore. I can't handle it.
Yeah, they're big.
Oh, they're huge. I just put my other one to sleep a year and a half. He was huge. He was a huge standard. Too much. There's Shirley.
Hi, Shirley.
Hi, Shirley.
Hi there, how are you?
Good, thank you. Good afternoon to you.
Right.
Just now, 4 more minutes, it'll be noon. We're back on
Okay.
standard time again.
Yeah, I remember. I know.
It's gonna be noon and 4 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
So did you hear all that?
I guess we would have to work on trying to,
We'd have to get a breeder who would be also willing to train.
well, I found
I'm gonna go get a couple.
in the newspaper today an ad for sheepadoodles from a local breeder.
We'll do it. But then our question is always, do they help, right?
I don't know. And I don't know.
Steve, are you going to be at the golf outing?
I will be there as a volunteer. I'm
Okay.
not going to push the ball down the lake. No.
I don't like golf. That was the one sport.
I never got into it. My dad was an avid golfer and tried to encourage me to do it. And I just
I
a
hear
lot of,
I get it.
Wasn't for me.
Me too. I like fast sport. I left my mother once. I was playing with her and I tried with the lessons. They were big golfers, my parents. And I just got out of the car. I said, I'm sorry, Mom, I can't do this. And I
Yeah.
left. And that was the last time. I don't like golf. I can't handle it.
We've got 2 sets of golf clubs in our garage that have been sitting there since we moved.
You're not going to use it.
No,
Boring. It's
it is. I mean, unless you have like a group of people that you enjoy and stuff, that makes a difference. But,
Yeah.
you know, when you're playing by yourself, it is very boring.
Yeah.
Very boring.
Hi, Marcia. Good morning.
Hi there,
Hi,
guys.
Marcia.
I'm at the dentist with my
Rita.
son who needs a driver to go home, so I'm doing this on iPad in the car
Okay.
instead of going home and coming back again. Let's see, I'm trying to get it on gallery. Oh, here it is, switch to gallery. I'm not used to doing this on here. Now I got you all.
Hi, Bonnie.
And I'm trying to download.
Good morning,
my,
everyone.
Marcia.
Good morning.
Hi.
Oh, before I forget, if I disappear, it's not because I willingly left. We've been having trouble off and on
Not working.
with internet connection. And I can be on and all of a sudden, ba-boom, my internet's gone.
I have
And
that
I'm not
with
the only
Zoom.
one. It seems
No.
like this has been an ongoing problem in certain areas.
Are you paying your bill?
Oh, yeah, I pay it online. Are you kidding?
I've had this with only with the Zoom connection in the middle of everything. I'll just lose the connection and I have
Yeah.
to go back in and reboot again. But it's only been with Zoom. And I just
I've had it
ignore
with
I don't say
everything.
anything. I just quietly go and redo it and then come back to class. So if you see me going blotto, that's what it is. Right now I'm signing in on the Wi-Fi for my dentist. So they were nice enough to have a guest one in there. So that's nice.
Bonnie, you're
Hi.
Bonnie.
Hi, Bernie. Is it getting cold in Colorado?
Bonnie.
Bernie?
Who's
Yeah, it's
calling
getting
me?
cool here. It's in the 50s.
Uh-huh.
Nice.
And at
What is
night
it
it
here?
gets
My
into the
car, it
30s.
says it's 75 out.
Something's going on. I've had to read this 4 or 5 times.
Trying to pull.
It's the internet.
I want to find out from them if there's a way.
We're waiting for the rabbi and a few others.
I hear a puppy dog.
There's the rabbi.
There.
There he is. Hey, Rabbi.
Good morning, everybody.
Good
Good morning, Rabbi.
Morning.
Here. Hi, Riva.
Good morning.
Good morning, Cy and Rochelle and Riva and Pam and Bettina. And hi, Bernie and Bonnie and Steve and Dee and Minya and Shirley and Babette.
That's coming
For
on.
the dog.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
Babette.
Babette.
Lorraine and Marcia notified me that they probably will not be available today. Marcia is going to try, but she had some conflicts in her schedule.
Well, Marcia's was on her iPhone, but she's waiting for her son to come out of the dentist.
Right, exactly.
So, but she may be coming on and off.
Yeah.
We ready to begin?
We are.
All right. Again, remember to mute yourself if you're not going to speak and be respectful of others. Let's start with the blessings. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai,
Our God,
ruler of the world, who sanctified us with your commandments, commanded in us to engage in the words of Torah. Amen. Rabbi, she's all yours.
Okay. Today we're doing Parshat Vayetze, and that is Parak Gimel beginning on page 76. Does everybody have the document and know where we are?
Yes.
We're dealing with dishonesty today, and Lily wants everybody to know that she's a very honest dog, and she did not steal any of those dog bones that are missing. And so now that we've got that out of the way, we have to deal with the biblical personalities, and specifically Lavan. Lavan is the Hebrew word for white, so it's essentially Mr. White. And the person who is the victim, perhaps, of Lavan's dishonesty is his father-in-law. So you can already see this is a family situation. It's one thing if the you go to buy something at TJ Maxx, or for the more upscale among us at Macy's or wherever, and the person to checking you out somehow adds another $10 that it's not supposed to be charged, and you might get a little upset. But when it's your family member doing the dishonesty, it can become much, much more painful and upsetting. And when you're dealing with very important issues like marriage and family businesses, it gets even worse. So that's sort of the setting. And so I had a friend who was a PhD psychologist, but he wasn't he didn't have patients coming in, for 50-minute hours. Instead, his specialty was counseling families who ran small family businesses. And not that small because they had to have enough money to pay him, but basically, specifically, when you're trying to turn the business over to the next generation. And very, very frequently, I guess this is a very well-known phenomena. The grandparents establish the business, the parents expand the business, and the grandchildren destroy the business. And so his job was to make sure, to the extent possible, that transition could be made, effectively, so that the grandchildren did not destroy the business. Here we're dealing with partly a little bit of that because Lavan is Jacob's father-in-law twice over. There's family lies, right? Like people lie more to their families than they do to outsiders, right? Because if I'm your rabbi and you don't want to tell me something, you don't tell me, right? Nobody's obligating you to tell me, why you did something or what you said to somebody, right? It's you tell me what you want to tell me if you want to tell me. But with families, you can't really do that, and so therefore there's a lot of lying that goes on, so there's different layers to this problem. We're also talking about Rachel, who is perhaps the most beloved woman in the book of Genesis. She's kind of and even Leah, who is the most famous ugly woman in the entire history of humankind, is essentially neither daughter did anything. Nobody did anything, right? Jacob didn't do it either. So you have a husband and two wives and two sisters, and everybody's, in terrible angst with each other, but nobody really caused it. It was caused by the previous generation. One manipulative father-in-law is all it took in this case to create terrible dynamics among many people that went on for decades and reverberates even to today. Okay, comments, anything? You may all want to have a Jewish Publication Society translation of the Torah in front of you, just for easy reference, if you choose to do that, either today or in future weeks. The Jewish Torah, the Jewish commentary on that is very nice. And, but you don't really need it because you've got the introduction here. Bernie.
Yeah, the soap opera continues. I'm surprised that Jacob trusted his uncle, knowing what his uncle's sister, his mother, had done previously with helping him, Jacob, conspire to trick their father, Isaac, with the blessing and the birthright and all of that. So that's number one. Number two is, I wonder, is this why the custom, at least in the Orthodox, of having the bride's veiled and then uncovered?
I'm sorry, Bernie, it's very hard to hear you.
Somebody's making noise in the background. And point two is a question. Does this where Jacob got tricked into marrying Leah first? Is this where the veil and the unveiling comes from in the Orthodox ceremony?
Yes, so, and I think it's not just in the Orthodox ceremony, right? In traditional marriage ceremonies, I think not even non-Jews, right? There was a veil. I don't think we use it barely anymore. Hi, Marcia, we see you twice. So that's okay. We get different views of you inside your car. There she goes. Now we only have one view. Yeah, the veil, and it's an interesting, and this again, I love this word, is an etiological explanation. Etiology is sometimes used in like cancer research. Where did it come from? Where did the cancer come from? In this case, it's talking about where did a custom come from. So it's a story in the Torah where it seems to be designed to explain, where something came from. And so clearly there was a practice that the husband would pick up the bride's veil at some point in the wedding. And somebody must have thought, well, where does this come from? And so this story is designed to explain that, because what did Jacob not do at his first wedding? Anybody tell me?
He didn't remove the veil.
Right. So his wife-to-be comes out. She's in a lovely white dress. She looks great, but he can't see her face because she's got a veil. What does Jacob do? Nothing. He just marries her. And then apparently they didn't put the veil up after the wedding either. They went straight to the marital bed and consummated the wedding presumably in the dark. And then afterwards, maybe then they fall asleep. And then it's only the following morning that Jacob wakes up and rolls over and says, "Good morning, Rachel," and realizes it's not Rachel.
That's a bit too much.
Now, something a little bit similar is occurring right now. In the Times of Israel yesterday, there was an article, an ultra-Orthodox woman in Brooklyn married about 10 days ago, a guy who claimed to be Syrian Sephardic and had studied in yeshiva for 7 years in Jerusalem. And they were married about a week, and somebody reported to the father that the guy was not who he claims to be. So her two brothers go to their house where the wife is living with her new husband, and they let themselves in, and they find that the man has not one, not two, but 3 passports, and that he apparently is a Lebanese Muslim who somehow smuggled himself into Israel and then became a yeshiva student. So now the question is, what is his, and they found pictures on the Lebanese version of Facebook of him with this apparently, secular Lebanese Muslimish family, looking kind of upper middle class and not terribly devout, but no signs of them being Jewish either. Now, why would he smuggle himself into Jerusalem, study in yeshiva for 7 years? Then he became a college student in Texas, and then met on an Orthodox dating site this woman and then married her. Is he a terrorist trying to infiltrate? Is he just self-fashioning and creating a new identity for himself that he likes better? Well, the brothers of this woman are, whatever his motives, which do not appear to be nefarious, there's no indications that he's connected to any terrorist group, and he seems like a bright guy, but they're not amused, because he's definitely, concealing his identity. So, they removed their sister, and she's in a quote unquote safe location, and the FBI is investigating.
This is where you need a good Jewish lawyer.
But apparently marital fraud is a common thing. And, I guess there's all sorts of things that people lie about, their height, their weight, their eye color, their age, but their entire identity. And so this is not the first time. Rochelle.
Just to kind of put this out, because that actually had happened to me. My first husband, whom I loved and adored, it turns out a year into the marriage, I'm actually not his type. I was like a beard, so to speak. He married me because he didn't want his family, whom they were all firefighters, 4 generations of them, he didn't want them to know really who he was. And he marries me. I fell for it. I never picked it up once. I felt like I was robbed. I felt like this was a fraud to me.
Now, unfortunately, I spoke to a woman not so long ago who was married to her husband for like 44 years. And he was gay the whole time. And, she only realized this, 35 years into the marriage. So this, I guess, is sexual orientation fraud. So.
Well, yeah, it's to me, it was like, first off, I don't care as long as he cleans the house. But and does my hair. That's all I care about. But I guess it was just wrong in situations like that. In the biblical sense here, at least there weren't children involved, where I had 3 children that were involved. It's like, hello, all you have to do is be truthful with me, and I'm glad. But he actually turned around a few years ago, I understand, and married another girl. Apparently he found out the other lifestyle wasn't for him. And so this is crazy.
Now, there's of course people who discover that they're a different orientation after they're already in something where it's not a deliberate fraud. That's a very different situation. Now, in Jacob's case, this is not a sexual orientation issue. It's a mistaken identity period issue. Now the question is, did Leah, presumably, did she know that she was being foisted off on this guy who thought he was marrying her sister? So she's complicit in deception. So the issue here, Harvey Fields calls it dishonesty. Now, it seems deception. So, okay, Dee, did you want to say something?
When I heard Rochelle's story, of course, the same thing happened to me, Rochelle. Yeah, I got married, and lo and behold, I found out that he preferred the other way. So we've been divorced for several years, but I had 2 children also. So I totally get it.
And that, I think, is why allowing and accepting gay marriage is so important, because you don't want to essentially force people to live lives that are not what they want to live, right? So, and it's completely unnecessary. And, this is something that in modern society, meaning the last 10 or 20 years, that, I think that once we've made that change, even many conservatives, and I won't out you if you're conservative, but you may want to out yourself. And, if you're more on the conservative end politically, it'd be interesting to see how you feel about gay marriage, because it does make everyone able to live the lives the way they are comfortable living them. So we want to minimize deception, but there's always pressure in marriage for deception, right? And in the ultra-Orthodox community especially, this is called a shidduch, who they get fixed up with. And, getting a good shidduch is very important, obviously, and that requires you to emphasize your credentials, and maybe more than your credentials, your family's credentials. Rochelle.
I was just saying, I'm kind of conservative when it comes to my politics, but I mean, as far as the marriage and everything, not just more taxes. Nobody should be angry. It's just more taxes. It's more happy people. Right? Everybody gets happy. That's what it is.
There was a comedian that made a joke, I think, where he said, that now gay marriage is legal, and he said, well, I guess it's a wonderful thing, but gays and lesbians are the only ones who want to get married, because heterosexuals have discovered how much pain marriage can bring. So he said it's all the better to people who are, innocent or naive enough to enter into marriage. So it was funnier.
I did it 3 times.
It was funnier the way he told it. Pam or Shirley or Minya, comments on this in terms of deception or anything else? Pam.
This thing about, okay, I gave you the wrong one, but, in 7 years you can have the other one. Is there a magic number? Is 7 years a magic biblical number?
Yes, because of this story and other stories, it's just used a lot, but why they used it here, I'm not sure, but
yeah.
It definitely 7 and 40 are 2 very noticeable numbers that reoccur.
I mean, 7 years sounds like a lot for.
Well, he was gonna get Rachel right away. He didn't have to wait 7 more years for Rachel.
Yeah.
He would get her almost immediately, but then he was just committing to future for another 7 years.
Oh, okay.
But then he's marrying 2 sisters almost simultaneously, so I don't know which is worse. Dee.
Rabbi, isn't 7 years in the Bible? Because 7 is typically the number of completion. So isn't that kind of how that?
But where did it become a number of completion? In other words, where did that number come from? I think it was just the number they chose to symbolize completion.
You have, I don't know, can you hear me?
Yeah.
There's 7 days in the week. Maybe that's got something to do with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Creation.
7 days of creation.
Creation, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I'm sorry. I apologize if I've gone in and out. I'm in the car. The car is trying to Bluetooth me, and then it's like a zooey. So just ignore me.
You're doing well.
Okay.
Other comments? Reva, Bonnie, Steve, Benita, Jennifer, Shirley, Cy.
Are we saying that deception is generally wrong?
That the what is generally wrong?
Deception is generally wrong.
Yeah, I think we're saying that deception is generally wrong, but there are exceptions because there's times where, we haven't gotten into that yet, but clearly you can't always be, totally honest.
Well, I don't agree to that. I think that the deception is like a lie. It doesn't always have to be a negative.
Right, all right.
Deception could be a good positive.
Yeah, maybe we wouldn't use the word deception, maybe we'd use the word necessary concealment or something that sounds a little better, but yeah, I mean, you can't always be honest, right?
That's right. And sometimes you have to be dishonest to do the right thing.
But not in this case. The guy lied about, which daughter he was going to put under the marital canopy. That's inexcusable, right?
In this case, it was a lie.
It was a very, very terrible deception for no, then his excuse the next day when Jacob runs furiously and says, you married, you gave me the wrong daughter, was, oh, it's a custom here that the older daughter gets married first. Well, he could have said that 7 years earlier, and then Jacob could have made his own calculations.
Yeah.
Riva.
Yeah, I think the relationships between both the siblings and the parent-child and the in-laws is all very interesting. And we're seeing in the Torah a number of times where there's dishonesty within the family. And there's kind of secret collaborators. For example, the sisters might have been in cahoots with one another. That's also suggested that they worked together to make this arrangement. There's one of my favorite sources is the Woman Torah Commentary.
Yeah.
And it mentions that in any age, there are primary battles are within the Jewish family. We have much to learn from the struggles between the two sisters. Rachel and Leah teach us that reconciliation involves struggle, not only with the external enemy, but also with ourselves. It asks that we see what we hate in the other as part of us. Anyway, etc. But I think that whole issue of how Jews relate to one another as part of an extended family, as well as these, primary family interactions with all the problems that they have. Certainly, we see them in our current world and in our temple, and not just our temple, but everybody's temple.
Rochelle, Babette, and then whoever else would like to talk.
When I first read this story several years ago, I wonder if it wasn't the girls that did this. What if Rachel didn't want to marry him? Leah actually did, so they convinced their father to take the fall for them.
Yeah, I mean,
that's just girls for you. That's just women, right? Women, we work with our sisters. We're like, okay, if you want him, then all right, you can have him.
Then we're just shifting the blame from the father, Lavan, to the daughters, Rachel and Leah. And if I were to ask Sai if that's acceptable, that the daughters fooled him and switched each other rather than the father-in-law, and you'd ask him if that made him any happier, I don't think he'll say that it would, right? He still would feel equally deceived, right, Sai?
Right.
And I mean, it might be worse because then your wife is the one that deceived you directly rather than her father. At least this way you can blame her father. But that's interesting. So it kind of, maybe the father took the blame. All right, Babette and then Minya. Okay, Minya.
On page 77, there's something to support that theory because it talks about how Rachel worked with her sister and even told her about the things that she liked about Jacob so that her sister could learn them. So there's this explanation in the box. So they were in cahoots according to that.
Yeah, Rachel was willing to sacrifice her own happiness for the sake of her sister.
Is,
Martha.
generally speaking, I think I don't know if it was just that family, but I think that usually, even to this day, many families, it's the older sister, the oldest child gets, or sister, it's usually the woman, gets married first. And the younger sisters after that. My daughter got all upset because her sister married a few months before her. I think it pushed her into marriage at that point because her younger sister got married first. It seems to be, and I never said it, it wasn't coming in from me. You know, it's just a tradition that people just expect, you know. And, but you know, there's other deceptions. There's making believe that you're wealthier than you are when you go into a relationship. There's, putting on 2 tons of makeup and then what happens when it comes off that evening, you know, and all that kind of stuff. There's many ways of deception that we have, you know, to fool each other, you know.
Yes, Babette and then Minya. Did Minya talk already? Yeah, Babette and then Sai.
Okay, well, since there was a way to get a divorce, you know, a get, I assume it was permissible then. Couldn't he have used that?
Yeah.
If he was so angry about the deception?
Now the idea of divorce is mentioned in the Torah. It is not, there's not the whole get. The details of the get are in the Talmud, which, you know, may not have been fully developed, but the idea of divorce was clearly there.
And if Rachel was part of the deception because she knew what was going on, maybe he could have said, you know what, the heck with the whole family. I'm out of here.
He could have divorced Leah after one day and just said, I'm quitting.
Well, Rachel is a deceptive person. I misjudged her.
Yeah, he spent 7 years working to get her to be married to him. That's a lot of wooing.
And it's a huge character flaw that she would participate in that.
Yes, if that is true. We haven't proven that to be the case. I wouldn't want her convicted in our court of public opinion without at least some evidence and preferably some firsthand testimony. Did Sai speak yet? Sai?
Well,
Sai, Pam, and
I'd like to think that Jacob was doing such a great job that Laban really didn't want to let him go. And so he had to figure out a way of keeping him. And, you know, he had a kind of a devious mind and he worked this solution out. And he helped build the business, so to speak.
Right. So they've got, you know, Lavan is looking for a son-in-law to join the family business. The problem is that Jacob seems to be insufficiently devoted to the business and excessively devoted to his younger daughter, Rachel. Okay, Pam and then D.
Leah had to definitely be part of the ruse, if not the instigator, because she had to keep the veil down until the marriage was consummated. Right? So I wouldn't be surprised if she was the instigator of this thing and convinced her father into it.
Leah. That would be not good, you know, because that would not be good at all. D.
Wouldn't it be that they both took part in it, but in the Bible, during that period of time, honor and shame with the family had a lot to do with their decisions. And with regard to these two daughters of their father, maybe they didn't want to shame their father, so they went along with this deception.
Yeah, I mean, you can be, your parents or grandparents, tell you to do stuff when you're little, you generally gonna do it out of loyalty to them. They're your patriarchs and matriarchs, and it may only be years or decades later that you realize that they totally put you down the wrong path, and that's a hard thing to deal with. Bernie.
I think we're not looking at it through the right set of eyes. We forget that back in those days, the daughters probably didn't have a vote in all of this. The father told them what to do and they had to do it.
Therefore, it's Lavan's fault and not the daughter's.
Right. And it's mentioned somewhere in here that Rachel conspired to avoid having her sister embarrassed. And by the way, this is the first time that we see non-rivalry among siblings.
Mhm.
Up until now, all the siblings have had serious difficulty with each other.
Right. So you're presenting Rachel as much more benevolent than some of the earlier comments.
Yeah, I think so.
It's all how you present it. The story can be woven in different ways. Whose hand was up? I think I saw a hand.
Quickie.
Yes.
What you told us what Laban means, what the name means. Could you remind us? I don't remember.
White.
White. Okay, thank you.
So is there significance in that? I don't know. Is it suggesting that it's like a satire that, white is supposed to represent purity, and here you have this father-in-law who's the opposite of that. So the Bible has satire in it. So maybe this is one of those things that they gave him a name that is exactly the opposite of his character traits. Riva.
Yeah, we have the expression white lies, but I'm also thinking that I understand in Israel, they sell pork, and in Hebrew, it's called white meat.
Right. But that's because I guess pork looks whitish,
They
right?
call it rabbits.
They call it
Instead of
what?
rabbits.
Oh,
That's what, yeah.
So,
Another deception. Okay.
Other comments, Minya, Shirley, Benita, Bonnie, Steve, Jennifer, Dee, and then Steve.
The way I see it, as I'm listening and thinking, it wasn't one time Laban was deceitful. He deceived him again with regard to working those 7 years for his sheep. And then he would give him his other daughter. So clearly, to me, he was a deceitful man right from the get-go.
Yeah. Now, did Jacob know this or not? Or what point did he realize this? We're not 100% clear. But I've dealt with people in synagogue life who I was naive. Why would they deceive and lie? I just didn't expect that. And then later you realize that they totally lied about things and you're like, uh-oh. But this, so yeah, this can happen. Steve.
Okay, it also came to thought for me anyway, Laban was concerned about Leah's unattractiveness. He's got to get her married and then deal with the consequences later. But
Right.
it could be the fact that she was unattractive, therefore she would not be considered marriageable.
Right. Now today, people marry or don't marry based on if they want to. But in those days, to have an unmarried child, and particularly an unmarried daughter, was a catastrophe. And so his highest priority appeared to be getting his older daughter married off. Rachel, he wasn't worried about. All right, Bernie.
It occurs to me that it's to Rachel's benefit in all of this to get Leah married off to Jacob first, because she has no chance of getting married until her older sister is married.
All
That's
right,
true. Yeah.
yeah. So if Leah doesn't get married for the next 15 years and she's second in line to get married, she can't get married until her sister does. If her sister never gets married, then she's in big trouble too. Bonnie or Riva, any comments? Riva.
I was thinking these people all know one another. They're not only a father-in-law, but it's an uncle and nephew and cousins who are intermarrying. These people all know one another. It seems to me, but it seems to me the larger issue relates to how do we deal with honesty and dishonesty within a family? And we see lots of it going through the Torah. And in this case, for example, the women are hardly described at all. They're just objects who are moved around. They don't have much character that's conveyed. What we see in the commentary is people, put on their own views of who these people are and why they're behaving the way they do. And the commentaries shift over time as the cultures where the commentators come from change.
Any other comments?
But the women are mostly blank slates.
Yeah, we're trying to fill that in a little bit, but it's not so easy to do because you can, now the Midrash can add stories that are not in the Torah, and we can in modern Midrash, but we'd like to rely upon the Torah text as much as we could. All right, who'd like to read bottom of page 76, Perek Gimel, dealing with dishonesty? Babette, would you read?
Okay. Perek Gimel, dealing with dishonesty. Twice in our Torah portion, Jacob must deal with the dishonesty of Laban, the father of Leah and Rachel. In the first incident, Laban promises to give Jacob his daughter Rachel as a wife. Instead, he deceives him and sends Leah in Rachel's place. In the second incident, Laban offers to pay Jacob for all his work by giving him his choice of animals from his herd. Then he deliberately cheats him by sending away with his sons the animals that Jacob has chosen. The two incidents point up Laban's dishonesty. He was willing to take advantage of Jacob when it came to marrying his daughters, and also when it came to paying him fair wages for all his work. Laban did not hesitate to lie when it suited his purpose, nor to steal when he believed he could get away with it. The question many interpreters ask is how Jacob should have dealt with Laban. How should you treat a person who is dishonest and may even be stealing from you? How shall we deal with deceit? Defining deceit. What is deceit? It is creating a false impression. A person who practices dishonesty shall not dwell in my house. It is forbidden to deceive anyone, Jew or non-Jew. To deceive with words or abuse with the tongue is a greater offense than to cheat in matters of money.
Okay, thank you, Babette. You can stop there. So let's turn to this issue of defining deceit. Sai referred to this earlier, And he said, sometimes you have to lie. So we have to differentiate between deceit and something else, right? Does everybody agree that you can't be completely honest to everyone at all times?
I think deceit has a special meaning. It's not a straight out lie. Deceit is a bad intention. Sometimes you got what we call a white lie, or lie of omission or something like that. But deceit's got a nasty tone to the word. It's not. It's more than a lie. Maybe I'm just reading into it. I don't know. I don't know what other people think, but I think this is beyond just saying you look nice in that dress when you don't. So.
Okay. Babette, Riva, and Rochelle.
Well, there's a phrase, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So if somebody is capable of gross deceit, is it your fault that you trust them again?
Although as I get older, I become more discerning, and I'm much less likely to fall victim even the first time, because I'm just much more cautious.
Well, it happens, right?
Well, I guess it can certainly, sometimes you have to take a purse, and it's not always like they say, I'm going to give you that Jaguar as a present. Sometimes it's just, you're just relying upon them to be responsible in a general sense. That it's not like they've promised you something or told you something specific. It's just that if they turn out to be completely unhinged or lie, that everything's going to fall apart. So it's more that you're just relying on their integrity and competence in general, rather than any specific promise.
Well, what about bubamyces? If you do it, why are you permitting yourself to be victimized a second time?
Yeah. Okay. Riva, Rochelle, and Sai.
I was thinking with deceit, there's two pieces. One is saying something that is literally not the truth, but there's another piece of it that can vary, and that's the intention of the person lying. And that is their intention. Their intention can vary from it being a kindness to, at the other extreme, causing harm or damage to the other person. So intention plays a big role in the issue of dishonesty.
Rochelle, and then Sai, and then Bonnie.
Well, and I like what everybody's saying about it, and I see absolutely all sides of it. When I think of deceit, one of the things that I've studied formally was cults. Just looking into it because I had to deal with a lot of patients and things in my life who had maybe been through them. And I think of deceit as something that all cult leaders had done. They knew exactly what the end result, what they wanted. So they intentionally deceived. I feel in deceit, for the most part, is an intent, and it's a selfish intent. You deceive someone to get something for yourself. You trick them. You use them.
That's what I was saying about the lie. It's got that word deceit has got a certain connotation.
Right. Okay, Sai, and then Bonnie.
Well, I think Rochelle was fine until she said that there was something wrong with it. And what I'm getting at is that if Biden tells Putin we have 52 more missiles than they have, and they better behave themselves, and we don't have the missiles, that's deceit. but that's good deceit, isn't it?
Well, that's the, and again, I think it's kind of, it's not always, but for the most part, from what I've experienced and with my studies and cults and stuff, people are deceitful with intent to gain something from that person, to use them for something. Those kind of things, I don't know if that's so much deceit or it's a lie to protect the country. But I see your point. That would be a good deceit. Yes, we need to do those things. That's to protect people.
And that depends which side of the fence you're on too. So,
Yeah, I guess so. The side that's getting the bombs or the side that's holding them.
right.
Bonnie,
Why do you have to?
I've
unmute?
been listening and I think there is a really wide difference between deceit and telling a lie. And as other people have previously said that I agree with, when someone is deceitful, it's for their own benefit, or they're deceitful because they deliberately want to hurt somebody else. And I don't know that a lie is an act of being deliberate, or if it's just something, did you take the cookie out of the cookie jar? No, I didn't. Well, of course, you've got cookie crumbs on your shirt. You did. Those kinds of things don't bother me that much. But when someone acts with deliberate malice to be deceitful, to either steal from someone else or cause harm to another person. And I think deceit can be it can be actually identified as being evil, where telling a lie is not as dangerous to me as someone who is deceitful. I told a lie one time to a priest. I was working at this little family restaurant, and a priest from the Catholic Church used to come in. And so one day he happened to order the pork chop lunch. And I got sidetracked, probably with another table, and forgot to turn his order in. So I turned it in, and then I went to him and I said, Father, I'm sorry your pork chop is taking so long, but the kitchen picked out an extra thick one for you that would take longer to cook. And of course he said, oh, thank you. That's so sweet. And I thought, well, he's happy and I didn't get in trouble. So I told a lie.
And you still feel bad about it.
No, actually, I look back on it because I just have fond memories of this priest. And I just, I think, well, nobody's going to punish me for that.
and I'm wondering if if there was a rabbi came in, whether Bonnie would have to change her story a little bit to accommodate a different set of sensitivities.
I don't know if I've ever waited on a rabbi. I've waited on a lot of Catholic priests, a lot of ministers. I don't know if I've ever waited on a rabbi. So if I did and I told a fib because I forgot to turn their order in, I guess I'll never know about it.
Well, the fib can go the other way. When I was in Georgia, one of the other rabbis wanted to eat pork for the first time. So he drove from Albany, Georgia to Tallahassee, Florida, which is about an hour away. And he went to the best restaurant there that was known for their suckling pigs. And he ordered a whole suckling pig. And just as it's arriving, the waiter's about to bring it to his table. And who does he see walking in? The president of his temple. So the president sees him and waves and comes over just as the waiter brings the suckling pig in front of him and drops it on the table. And the rabbi turns to the president of the temple and he says, I love this restaurant. I order a baked apple and look at how they fix it up.
It's an old joke.
Okay. That's a classic.
So, but Bonnie was not the waitress that day.
No.
Okay, who's next? Minya, and then, okay, Minya.
I totally agree with Bonnie. I don't think that using lying and deceit are interchangeable. I really think that they, like Marcia said, deceit has a really negative connotation to it. Lying is not exactly the same as being deceitful. And I think that I agree with how Bonnie described it, as deceitful is with the intent, just like Rachel said. The intent of doing harm and knowing that you're doing it. Whereas lying, I don't think when someone tells a lie that they're purposely trying to hurt somebody else. Whereas I think when you deceive them, then you are.
Okay. Bernie.
All right, I have a question for the group. When Aaron Rodgers was asked last couple of months ago, was he vaccinated? And he answered, I've been immunized. Was he lying or being deceitful?
He was being deceitful.
And lying.
I vote for deceit.
And lying.
I vote for deceitful.
Yeah.
So
I don't think he lied.
What's the difference in definition? What makes something deceitful?
That's why I asked the question.
The
Well, did he
intention.
know it? Did he know what immunization? He said he was immunized.
Yes.
Could have been immunized to measles. He didn't
But
say he was immunized.
he knew he was.
COVID.
He knew he wasn't carrying the antibodies for the.
Right, because he did not
could
have the
spread the
COVID
disease. Yeah.
He knew he had not been vaccinated for COVID, and he was trying to fool the people.
Yes,
Right.
that's what I
By
think.
being evasive.
Right.
I guess according to Minya's thinking, he could have said, I am vaccinated, referring, in his mind to polio or measles or something.
Right.
But he knew that the question was about COVID, and he knew that the question was about, were you, did you take one of the vaccines that's recognized, that referring specifically to either Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson. Even if he'd been vaccinated with, let's say, the Chinese shot, then he would, just saying, yes, I've been vaccinated would not have really been a sufficient answer, because it's not really within the realm of what we're expecting. So anything other than those 3 shots would have required a more forthright explanation, I would think.
Yeah, I think bottom line is misleading is the intention, and the intention is in that case to mislead.
Yes.
Right.
But doesn't it matter what the impact is? So if, let's say, 3 people had caught it from him and died, that would be very different. That in this case, where presumably nobody caught it from him and he caught it from somebody else. So there's no real damage, is there? Is there, Pam?
I think when you're a public figure, you have more of a responsibility not to deceive that. I mean, so I think, to me, it's a big deal that what he did. And I'm going to send a nasty letter to State Farm.
I was just gonna say, so how do you explain State Farm backing him?
Yeah, I can't.
That's totally wrong. Talk
Yeah, I
about
think
it.
that's totally wrong.
Yeah.
Am I the only one who got knocked off there?
We can't see you, Rabbi.
Oh, I don't know what happened.
There you are.
Ray just came on. Hi, Ray.
Hi, gentle.
Hi, Ray.
Oh, Ray, how are you, darling?
Uh-huh. I was at the dentist.
Okay. So can you repeat what was just said? I was somehow bounced off for inappropriate behavior there just a second ago. And I don't know why, but now I'm back.
That's what keeps happening to me.
Well, who did you get bounced off when I was talking?
Yes. So can you repeat the second half of your comment?
Well, I just said that as a public figure, he had a greater obligation to make sure he was clear,
Okay.
not done. And, he was definitely deceitful, and I'm upset with State Farm for, letting him remain as a highly paid public figure.
So it's not only whether anyone close to him caught it and died, it's also the example he sets for people in completely different states or countries that may never meet him that are in danger as a result of his actions. But does it matter that he apparently is sincere in his beliefs? So he has essentially an alternative religion where he believes that certain things are good and certain things are bad, and he's following his belief systems.
That doesn't matter. I mean, if he says to the NFL, listen, I believe otherwise, I can't play football right now. He should have done that.
So it's okay, or it's better if he'd been honest, and then they could, so it's the same thing as Lavan. If Lavan had said, I've got 2 daughters, they're a package deal, take them both or take neither, then Jacob could have done what he wanted to do. And so Lavan had all the cards, and he could have set any conditions he wanted to, but he had to be honest about it, not deceptive. But somehow it seems people are not usually pretty honest. They usually deceive you if they can. I don't know why. It's somehow part of human behavior. Okay, other comments? Okay, if not, then Babette, you can read on. We're on page 77 at the bottom left-hand side.
Okay. Jacob's first response to Laban's trickery was to confront him with a series of questions. What is this that you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I have been in your service? Why did you deceive me? One impression we get from the questions Jacob asks is that he is conducting an investigation. He is trying to sort out Laban's motive and also seeking to test his own memory of their agreement. While his questions are clear and direct and reveal his disappointment, they are not asked in an angry or even hostile manner. When Laban explains that it is not the custom in our place to marry off the younger before the older, Jacob seems to accept the reasoning without protest. Could it be that Jacob, the younger son, felt guilty at the moment for the trick he had played on his own father, for stealing the blessing from his older brother Esau? Some commentators believe that is the reason why Jacob agreed without complaints to Laban's explanation, Midrash.
Okay, thank you. And that's from one of the famous Midrashic collections. The most famous is probably called Midrash Rabbah, and another one, their collection is called Midrash Tanhuma. So these are additional stories about the biblical figures we know that are not in the Torah. So, so far we have focused on Lavan's behavior, and then somebody suggested maybe it was Rachel and or Leah that had manipulated the situation, and their father took the blame. But it was all on the other side. Now we're coming to Jacob. Is Jacob an innocent party in general terms? What can we say about Jacob's role in all of this? Is he being a victim because he's naive? Rochelle.
I believe this is a case of karma. He deceived, ergo, he was deceived.
Wow. So, so he collaborated with his mother to dress up like his older brother, put on to make himself hairy, and his mother made a stew that only the brother usually made, and they gave it to him, and he went into his father and said, I'm not Jacob, I'm Esau, and convinced his blind and possibly demented father that it was true. And so now
That's deceit.
Well, the rabbis have gone to great extent to justify this because Jacob is the spiritual father of Judaism. And so to say that the whole thing was created because of major deceit is not something they wanted to do. But clearly Rochelle is correct. And clearly, you know, Rebecca may be largely responsible. You know, she seems to have directed her son. So it seems that sins of the fathers and the mothers then move on to the children, and the children then they are partially guilty, and so they behave in ways to defend these behaviors, and it goes on and on and on. And nobody's really responsible because it's all part of family dynamics that you partially inherit. And there's no really way to extricate yourself from all of this badness that you inherit from your ancestors. So, but yet, you know, Judaism stresses that you can inherit very good things from your ancestors. All right, other comments? Pam? No comment. Minya? These are the two sages that we are most reliant upon, Pam and Minya, and if they're both silent, we need new voices to fill in the gap. Okay, then Babette, you can keep going. We're at the top of page 77, right-hand column. How is it possible that Jacob mistook Leah for Rachel? You would think that he would have noticed that it was the wrong sister, even if she had a veil on.
A great Hasidic rabbi, Levi Isaac de Bedishev, 1740 to 1809, known for his defense of Jews and his forgiving attitude to all human beings, once explained that when Rachel learned that Laban planned to trick Jacob by giving him Leah as a bride instead of herself, she decided to do all that she could to save her sister from shame. So she thought Leah of all the secret signs of love between herself and Jacob. In that way, Rachel was sure that Jacob would take Leah as his wife and not reject her. They were fooling around, I guess. Rachel was willing to sacrifice.
You're making me blush.
Okay, it's coming, right? Rachel was willing to sacrifice her for the sake of her sister. When Jacob learned of Rachel's sensitivity toward her sister and her concern about her brief being humiliated, for his love for Rachel increased. In this case, deceit committed for a righteous, not a selfish person, brought reward. It is tzaddik for righteous person allowed to cheat. If the person with whom he is dealing is dishonest, one is permitted to outwit him.
All right, so we have here two separate ideas. Let's take the second one first. It says here, if you're trying to be a good person and you're, I don't know, in a business negotiation, and it becomes clear the other person is a very deceitful person, according to this, which is from the Mishnah, part of the Talmud, you're allowed to try to treat them just as much as they're trying to cheat you. Responses to that?
Is this, I don't know if you can see my hand. Rabbi?
Yes.
You can hear
I
you.
don't know, yeah. Is it, is this what gives Jewish people this reputation for trying to cheat or be dishonest in business dealings? Something like this?
Well, it would seem to me, if I was writing this, if it becomes clear the person you're negotiating with is obviously deceitful, the best advice would be to cancel any further negotiations and walk away. So I want to buy a house, and the guy selling it, I go in and he's obviously got forged documents that the roof has been repaired, and he's got a false evaluation. And so I should just walk out the front door and say, you'll have to sell your house to somebody else. I'm not interested. Then you extricate yourself from the situation. The idea that you're going to forge your own documents to out cheat him, that seems like, a race to the bottom.
Right.
Yeah, Rochelle.
I believe in a scenario like that, by outwitting them, wouldn't you go and spread the word to others that he tried to cheat you? So if someone else may not be cheated by him, so you spread the word. That's the outwitting of that person.
Right. Okay. Steve or Bernie? Ray.
Because this is a conjecture, I fail to give it much honor. This is a story that was told by mouth for generations. And then generations later, our sages try to find a way to get around it.
So you're talking about the top story about the idea that Rachel, so we're moving now to the other part of this box where Rachel, according to this Hasidic commentary, Rachel trained Leah in all of their secret signs, and that explains why, Jacob didn't pick up on the deception.
Sounds implausible to me.
Yeah, well, me too. I mean, it requires you to, yeah, totally. Pam.
I think it's implausible that Jacob went the whole night without lifting the veil. I'm sorry, but
No, I mean, my scenario was that when they got back to the bedroom, it was in the dark. And so it was dark. So the veil came off, all the clothes came off, but it was dark. So.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I just can't see a guy not checking it out.
I think this is a case of going to bed at 2 with a 10, waking up at 10 with a 2.
That's pretty funny, but all right, let's say, Pam, that it was the wedding reception was over at 1 a.m. and they're a little bit drunk. So they go back to the room and they want to consummate the marriage, but they're half drunk and they're very tired and it's late at night and the lights are out. Remember, there's no electricity, so there's no way to see even if they wanted to. So they get in bed, they have sex, they go to sleep, and there's no lights.
But your eyes adjust to the dark.
I'm with Pam. If they were fooling around, not everybody has the same size parts,
Right. You would think that he would have recognized just from touching her hand that this is not the same woman, that they, just from her voice that, what do I know? Bernie.
If we debunk this part of the story, the whole thing falls apart.
Therefore, yeah.
And so we had nothing to talk about.
Yeah,
we would have had nothing to talk about.
Yeah, Bernie's right. This is critical to the whole concept.
So we need to have suspend our skepticism, and we just have to accept one way or another that Jacob was fooled. Well, we don't. We could believe that Jacob was a willing collaborator in this whole thing. Sai.
Oh, I think Jacob knew what was going on, but he really was such a nice guy. He didn't want to embarrass her, so he said nothing. And so why make her feel bad? There's nothing more you could do in the middle of the night.
You don't have to make Jacob a nice guy to make this story work. You just have to understand that he wanted Rachel badly enough that he went along with it.
But do you really want to marry her sister with all of those complications, and you don't want to?
if that's your only choice, the only way to get Rachel, then yeah.
All right, so Bernie's now presenting the scenario that Jacob kind of knew, Lavan kind of knew, and but nobody said anything, but kind of it was understood that Lavan might slip in the older daughter because the older daughter
I'm-
gets married first.
I'm doing a
And-
class on Zoom. A lady just went by and said, your car's been parked there a long time.
Yes, and Marcia's parked in front of a bank, and so they're worried she's about to rob the bank.
No, elegant dentistry.
Oh, they think that you have the appointment and you're afraid to go in.
No, I'm waiting for my son who was afraid to go in to come out. I'm his driver for the day.
So maybe this is all, everybody knows what's gonna likely to happen, but Jacob has somewhat plausible deniability. So they're offering him, maybe Leah wasn't so bad looking after all, and he said, well, if she's being offered, I'll take her. And then I'll negotiate for the other daughter in the morning.
But they did multiple marriages at that point anyway.
Yeah, they did multiple
And not
marriages.
7 years apart like this, you know?
Well, no, the way I understand it is that he waited 7 years for the first wife, but then when Lavan says, all right, I'll give you the second wife, he got Rachel like a week later, and then he had a promise to work another 7 years after.
Okay.
I
That's
think,
different.
maybe I'm wrong, I'm not sure, but I don't think he waited 14 years to get Rachel. That would be ridiculous. I mean, the waiting 7 years, perhaps these girls were quite young when they first made the deal, right? So, but if she was 25 when they first made the deal, you don't think she wants to wait from 25 to 32, just waiting for a business arrangement to work itself out so
Right.
that she could get married. But Pam,
This is why occasionally I have these doubts of how these people made our list of patriarchs and matriarchs.
well, that's what we like about it because they're so human. I mean, you know, that they're clearly not saintly, you know, we're not looking to them, to any of them as being these, you know, holier than thou people who are incapable of doing anything wrong or, you know, quite the contrary.
Yeah.
Riva and then Bonnie.
I'm on top, the left-hand side of page 79. I like to sneak to the punchline. This is the
Okay.
tail end of this. And in the final paragraph, it basically says that the point of a lot of this is the development of Jacob's character. He came in as a trickster and a cheater, and he goes out as a man of strength, reason, and integrity. So maybe some of the point of this is the evolution of people or culture or whatever to a more sophisticated and more ethical view of how we treat one another and how we behave. And the details are, you know, every generation gets to make up their own details.
And this is something that I've been trying to promote for many years, Reform Judaism as a system of analysis and introspection about character traits. Marcia.
Speaking of skipping ahead, I was on my way back to 77. And if we stop at page 78, you can do above the box, but below the left-hand box. One other way of handling cheaters is to expose them publicly. Confrontation in front of an audience not only brings satisfaction to the party, but being harmed, but also warns others about those who practice deceit. It is clear from the Torah text that Jacob shares Laban's dishonesty with Leah and Rachel, but he doesn't, he kept his complaint is not a public one, is what it goes on to say. It's kept within the family. So they do not expose him in the marketplace or to his friends. So that's an important thing, you know. Even though their father has been unjust, they don't discuss it out in the world. It would be embarrassing for Jacob to embarrass Laban and the girls out publicly in this. And so he did act as a gentleman if he kept it within the family.
What do you think, Dee?
I agree with what Marcia said, but I also, again, studying and reading.
Hey, Joe, Rensselaer, Indiana.
We heard that, Si.
Again, you know, during that period of time, especially with their mindset, that Middle Eastern, everything was about shame and honor within the family. So to go and wash their dirty laundry out in public, as we say, would be very shameful for the whole family, the whole clan. So rather than do that, they keep it the way, because all these players had their hand in some sort of dishonesty. That's the way I read it from this whole lesson here.
I guess they're maybe saying that some form of deception is inevitable in human relations. It's how you handle that deception. And that's really hard because I try not to tell little lies because, you know, if you tell a little lie, you have to remember what you said. And
Yep.
it's just,
You have to have a good memory.
and if it's pointless. So if somebody says, can you come over right now? And I say, no, I have a dental appointment when I don't. And then they see me and they said, how did your filling go? And I was like, what filling? Then, you know, so it's just better to say something vague like, I can't come now, and not give a reason. So you're not lying, you know, and that makes it simpler and you feel better.
That whole paragraph after what I just read on page 78 explains by a rabbi from Lithuania about how to approach the ethics of confronting a deceitful person. And so I think it's kind of helpful in reading that.
So what are our conclusions in general about deceit? There's certain circumstances in which it's really awful, and there's other circumstances at which lying a little bit is minimally acceptable or even understandable. Would that be some concluding thoughts? Dee or Steve or Bonnie or Riva? Okay, Bonnie.
I just, I'm sorry, I wanted to ask the question. If Rachel was the bride and she and Jacob were married, what would have happened to Leah as the elder sister who wasn't married and her younger sister gets married? What would have happened to her as far as her place, not just in the family, but in the community? Would she have been shunned? Would she have been referred, like they used to refer to women as being an old maid?
Yeah, well, I guess that could have happened, right? I mean, we don't know, but Lavan, if Lavan had let Rachel marry Jacob and then he had the business was already going to be handed over to this son-in-law, so there'd be no incentive for anyone to marry Leah, then she probably would have ended up unmarried and living at home her whole life, I guess. So you could argue that Lavan felt it was a mitzvah to deceive Jacob in order to prevent Leah from living at home her whole life.
Could be.
Bernie?
Why couldn't he have just been upfront and said, look, you don't get You don't get the younger daughter until the older one is married off.
Yeah, that's the question. Why didn't, I guess he certainly, yeah, Rochelle.
Given that there were 7 years between the time he promised this to Jacob, just assuming it's 7 actual years, perhaps he thought that in that time, Leah would be taken by someone. Her hand would be given.
Oh, right. Okay, that's a good point. Right. So he promises Rachel to Jacob in 7 years' time. He figures exactly what Rochelle's saying. Over the 7 years, he figures Leah's going to get married. 7 years go by, it becomes clear nobody's going to marry this girl. So then, out of desperation, Lavan says, I better figure out something. What do how does that sound, Babette? Does that sound plausible?
Well, if in those days to your physical appearance was not the inheritance, but the physical appearance was the attraction,
I think
it might not have happened,
But he had 7 years to work on it.
Well, did he have to find a poor schnook?
Yeah. He apparently didn't work too hard on it, did he?
Ray and then Rochelle.
All right, he had compassion for his oldest daughter. He could simply tell the truth. First, my oldest daughter must marry. And we can make the arrangement for immediate marriage to for quicker marriage if you marry my daughter-in-law, my first daughter, and in another year or two, I'll give you Rachel. If he had been straight about the whole thing, it would have worked out better. Meanwhile, in the 7 years, Leah gives birth to, is it 4 or 5 children? She gives birth to a lot of children, so she wasn't repulsive. She must have been a pretty young woman as well.
He had the correct part.
Yeah.
Rabbi, I want to see how you're going to dance around that one.
Especially since you could have 4 wives. Like, that's the way it had to be truthful.
Well, Ray is saying something that, of course, seems so rational and reasonable. But I think if anything comes out of the story is people don't behave rationally and reasonable, even when it's in their own best interest to do so. It's just easier to lie and conceal and manipulate. It's just the way people act, especially in maybe if you've taken an undergraduate degree in psychology or done a master's degree in philosophic logic or something, or if you're Dr. Spock, but normal people, especially in those days, would just rely upon their emotions, and then they would, try to cover their tracks afterwards. So if Ray had been advising Lavan, things would have turned out probably better, but she wasn't. And if she was there at the time, he probably would not have listened to her anyway. Okay, well, that's a little bit about deceit. I'll turn it over to Steve for the final blessing. Next week, we're dealing with the Rape of Dina. And this was made into the bestseller and the movie. The
Red Tent.
Red Tent, yeah, it was a good book. Yeah.
And that's basically the whole book is a modern midrash on a story in the Torah, which is not gone into very much. Okay, over to you, Steve.
Let us conclude with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai,
Adonai,
Eloheinu
Eloheinu melech
haolam,
haolam,
asher natan
and
Torah
Lana,
Emet,
Emet,
b'chayei
B'chayei
olam
olam
natan
nata
b'tchayei.
b'tchayei.
Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah
Adonai,
Adonai,
noten
noten
Torah.
haTorah.
Blessed is Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us the teaching of truth and planting within us eternal life. Blessed is Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen.
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 Have a
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone, for your insightful discussion, and we'll see you again soon.
Okay, take care. Have a good
Take
week.
care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a
Bye.
wonderful day, everyone, and thank you for
Yep.
such a wonderful discussion.
Thank
Guys,
you.
too.
I'm
Thank you.
glad
Bye-bye.
I made it.
Yeah.
I am too, Ray Ray.
Oh,
We're happy to
interesting.
see you, Ray.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. I gotta go see if the dentist is done.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care, Marcia.
Bye-bye.